Hello. This is the second lesson in the fifth Fetter. And this is going to be a bit of a rant. In the original plan, we wanted to talk about the bubble of reality today, but the more we talked about it, the more we saw that that wouldn't be a good idea, because the fifth Fetter is about all the things that you don't want, right? It's about ill will and aversion and anger, annoyance, irritation, frustration, resentment, and envy. It's all of those things that you don't want. When something is happening or somebody is saying something that you don't want, that's the foundation of the fifth fetter. And it's also the fetter that is like the last of the lower five. So it's very much a sum up of all the lower five fetters. So it's very much the sum up of the identification, of that assumption that we have about a separate self and about all the different types of identification that we have. So it's very crude in many ways. And just to tell you that whenever you get angry or whenever you get annoyed or irritated or frustrated or envious or whatever it is, full of resentment, all of that, to just tell you that it's about the bubble of reality and that everything is about the mirrors on the inside, it is true, but we were afraid that it would make it possible for you guys to bypass, and we don't want that. So instead we decided on doing a rant. And that's what this is. So the fifth fetter is about don't want. It's about ill will, aversion, aggression, anger. Whenever somebody says something that you don't want, and you get that feeling whenever something happens that you don't want, and you get that internal feeling, that frustration that happens, that annoyance that happens. It's about looking at that, because clearly it's about identification. If you really, really knew that there is no I, there's no one to get annoyed, right? There's nobody who can get angry. There's nobody who can have a hook into people doing in a certain way or being in a certain way or saying things in a certain way or having any type of expectation to things panning out in a certain way, but just being completely open to whatever happens, right? If you know that there is no I, then you also know that there's nobody that can have a wish about reality being any different than it is. And whatever is happening, it's completely fine. So as long as that is not the case, then there's still identification happening. And instead of just doing the bypassing and saying, well, there is no I, and then just getting, pass it like that and have but there's reaction happening here sometimes, and I just throw a chair through the room and don't feel anything afterwards, I'm completely fine, so it doesn't really count at all, that's reaction. And the motto for the fifth fetter is the more reaction, the more reflection. So the more you believe that you react because of something outside of you, the more you need to look into and reflect on, how is that even possible? It's never anything outside. Nobody can say anything that makes you angry. Nobody can say anything that annoys you or irritates you. Nobody can eat in a certain way that makes you irritated or annoyed. Nobody can say anything that makes you feel envious or resentful. All the stories you have about they didn't do what they should have done as parents, for example, or they didn't do as they were supposed to do as a spouse or a partner. All that is identification. You sit in a place where you identify with something. There's something in you that has a resistance to what is happening. And the resistance is partly about that things are not going your way. You know how things should go. This is not how they're going, and you don't like it. You don't want that. You want things to happen the way that you want it to happen. That's identification. Because then you put yourself in a position where things are not allowed to be as they are. People are not allowed to be as their life is not allowed to be as it is. But you want that to be different. That's identification. And instead of you now pulling out the whip and starting to whip yourself for still identifying and finding out that you're still identifying, instead of that happening, then please be kind. Please be kind. Because the whole fifth fetter is about that there are parts of you that cannot be kind, that cannot be friendly, that cannot be loving, that cannot be accepting and forgiving, and that just can't go with life the way that life moves. There's a resistance to what is happening. And that resistance we can sit and talk about that for ages. It's about, entitlement, it's about all those things. What we would like for you to look at, because we have that idea that when we talk about the fifth fetter, that it's because Janice, is so loud in the office. That really, really annoys me, right? Then we have a tendency to talk about Janice, and I talk about Janice being loud. But the way that we work with it is that that's not the case. Janice is Janice, Volume is volume. There's nothing wrong with Janice at all. There's nothing wrong with Janice volume. As long as other people are fine with Janice being as she is, then it can't be Janice, can it? It is an internal job. There's something inside of you that gets activated by Janice. And we tend to want Janice to be different. We want Janice to dial down on the volume. We want Janice to change. And the only reason is that then we don't have to look at what it's actually about. What is it actually triggering and activating in me? If she change how she is, I won't feel it, which means that much more comfortable for me. She's the one that needs to do the work. I don't. But the issue is that both the fourth fetter and the fifth fetter, all the things we want and all the things we don't want, it's only diversions, right? It's not real. There is no such thing as anger and annoyance and irritation and envy and resentment. There's no such thing. It's something we do to divert from something internal. There's something happening on the inside that is too icky to feel. It's too icky to be with. And we don't want to do that. We don't want to be with it. So instead of allowing what is and stay with that, we divert and make it into an outside job. What we would like for you to do is to know that everything that you feel, it can only ever be about you. Since it's not everybody who gets angry and annoyed and resentful and envious, but you do, it's an inside job for you. Nobody needs to be any different. The life doesn't need to be any different. This moment doesn't need to be any different. If you have an issue with this moment, then it's an inside job. There's something in you. There's a contraction happening in the body that is so uncomfortable that you're diverting with it. And you're diverting in a way that is believable. It's Janice. She's so annoying. If only Janice were different. If only Janice would dial down. We are asking you, are you sure? Are you sure about that? Are you sure that it wouldn't just be something else? How many areas in your life do you get annoyed at? How many things annoys you? Do you really think that if all those things disappear, that you wouldn't be annoyed anymore? Look into experience, into your past. How many things stopped being in a certain way and then there was just something else that annoyed you? It's because it's not about the outside thing. The outside thing can change and you will still be annoyed. You will still be angry. You will still be envious and resentful. That will still be there. And again, I want you to be compassionate and loving and kind towards yourself when we talk about this. There's a contraction happening in you. And instead of staying with that contraction, when Janice says something, a contraction is happening. Instead of staying with that contraction, you're leaving yourself and projecting it into her so we can divert and look at that. I want you to let Janice be Janice and just stay with it. Stay with that contraction. Like we talked about multiple times, when you stay with that contraction in the body, just allow it to be there. There will be a label saying Janice annoyance, that is what it's about. Detach those labels and just sit with the contraction. How does it feel? How does it feel in your body? And every time the mind is trying to make it into a story, oh, that is because of my childhood. That is because of my mom and dad. That is because I was never allowed to this and that. That is because I never ever experienced this and that. All that is again just a diversion. If you say, I wish that Janice was different, that again is a diversion. The issue is that there's a contraction happening in you and you're diverting from that contraction. So stay with that. And whenever the mind tries to create a story about the contraction, oh, this is about this and that, just notice what is happening. Oh my goodness, the mind is trying to create another story. The mind is trying to create another story, another diversion, another diversion. It's still not what it's about. What needs to happen is you staying here, this moment right now, and just staying with that contraction and allowing it to be here, feeling it in the body. It's fine if you get mental pictures or if you get like thoughts or smells or hear sounds or something that is giving you an indication of what it's about. And you can use it for that, but nothing more. You need to detach it because otherwise we are still just going to talk about the label. And that is what is happening in therapy, that we go into looking into where is this pointing? And then we look into that story. But the problem with that is that in therapy, we assume that there's a self. We assume that there's a me that has experienced all these things. And we keep talking about the stories. That's why you can stay in therapy for 20 years, talk about the stories. And we're just creating another concept, another story, and changing, the underlying belief into a new belief. Instead, we would like for you to stay right here, not adding another story, not adding another concept, not changing it into a new belief, but just staying here in the physical experience of right now, the direct experience of right now. How does your body feel right now? And just stay with that. So in the fifth fetter, when it's useful to be aware if it's anger or aversion or irritation or envy or resentment that is, coming up to the surface. It's useful to be aware that that is what you feel, that is the diversion. It's anger. I feel anger. That is the diversion. That is useful because that is pointing at something. And that is a little breadcrumb for you to know in which direction you're supposed to look. So in you right now, when you think of something Janice is doing, if you feel anger, let's say, that anger is not about Janice. It's about something else. But what Janice is doing is pointing to the direction because she did a lot of things that didn't make you angry. Then she does one thing and that makes you angry. That is pointing at something. What is it that you get angry about that she can get away with and that you can't? Because it's not about her. It's an inside job. So look at where it's pointing. So if we say that, for example, in the office, Janice, she is noisy, then you know that I'm getting annoyed and I'm getting angry and it's about the noise. Okay. You know it's not about Janice. So how am I noisy? Well, I'm not. So it's not about that. I would ask you, are you sure? Are you sure you're not noisy? Yes, I'm never ever saying anything. I'm always very considerate about other people. So it can't be about that. Are you sure about that? Ask yourself, how am I noisy? How is this about my noise? How is this about my silence? How is this about me? How is this about something that I'm repressing? How is this about something that I don't want in my life? Something that I am. What do I see that Janice is right now that I'm not allowing me to be? Or if it's about Janice being disrespectful. How is this about disrespect? How is this about my disrespect? How am I disrespectful? I'm not disrespectful. Are you sure about that? Are you sure about that? Right now, you're not allowing Janice to be Janice. That's quite disrespectful. So in what other areas in your life are you disrespectful towards yourself? If this is only an inside job, if it's not about Janice at all, and it's only about you looking in, the more reaction, the more reflection. If you need to look in about you being disrespectful, about you, about how you are in life, what is this really about? What feeling is connected with that disrespect? What is happening in you if you're not disrespectful? What is happening in you if you are, always saying yes? If you should define disrespect, what does that actually mean to you, for you? How are you regarding disrespect? It's always an inside job. And it's one of the reasons why it's so difficult to know on which end is up when we talk about the fifth fetter. In this fetter, we're going to talk about the bubble of reality, that everything is, you looking at you. And that's what I'm trying to say in this rant, that whenever you point fingers at other people and, make them responsible for your ill will and aversion and anger and annoyance and irritation, frustration, envy, resentment, whenever you point fingers at them, it's just a diversion. You're doing that because you hope that their feeling of inadequacy is going to pick up on that one. And then we can talk about them. Then you avoid talking about you. And it's why we're here. We're standing right next to you, holding your hand. It's fine. It's fine. There is no such thing as ill will and aversion and anger and resentment and envy and all. There is no such thing. There is no such thing. So we're standing right next to you, holding your hand. And whenever you think that you need to divert, we're standing right next to you and saying it's fine. It's fine. Look into your direct experience. What is the diversion about? What is it in you that needs to be addressed? What is that contraction actually pointing at? And it's also that delusion that we have about things, something can be better. If she didn't do that, something would be better. If he didn't do that, things wouldn't be as bad as they are. So we believe that things can be good or bad. Again, it's a concept. There's no such thing as good or bad. If this moment doesn't need anything, then how can anything be good or bad? What some person think is great, other people think is horrendous. If we talked about it yesterday that when the whole pandemic happened and everybody was like, oh my goodness, the world is falling apart. Who is winning on this in any way? Zoom did. Did you know about Zoom before the pandemic? And is that what is horrendous and horrible for one person, it's great for someone else, which means there is no good or bad. It's just about which end you look at it from, which means that it's just an opinion. And this moment doesn't need anything. So if you think something is good, look into that. If you think something is bad, look into that. If you have, something you really, really don't want, you don't want to get fired. Okay, I understand that. What is that about? What is that about? What is it about being fired that is a problem? Yeah, but what about my money? What about, okay. I get it. Slow down. Into a direct experience, into your body right now. What is going on? I have a deep-seated feeling of fear. Okay, let's talk about that. What is it you're actually afraid of? And it always comes down to being about something completely different. And that is what needs to happen in the fifth fetter. Instead of staying on that shallow, superficial level where we pretend that somebody can make you angry or somebody can annoy you, how about being honest about it? How about talking about your direct experience? Knowing nobody can do anything. Nobody can make you angry. Nobody can annoy you. Nobody can irritate you, no matter how much they, chew bubblegum, speak loud on the phone, park, and, double park in a parking lot, honk at you in traffic, stand too close in a line in the supermarket. And no matter how much other people say that you annoy them and say that they are angry at you, how much you irritate them, it's not about you. What is relevant for you in that case is to look into why do you buy into that. If you know that it's an inside job, if you know that there's no separate self, then you also know, and you know about the bubble of reality, then you also know that when somebody gets angry at you, it's not about you. Can't be. It's about them. There's a mirror that they're standing and yelling at. You're just there. They would be on a desert island and still be angry. You don't need to be there. They will still be angry. So look into why you buy into it. So when somebody is pointing fingers at you, trying to divert from that contraction they have in them, which they don't want. They don't want to look into it. They don't want to feel that contraction. It's too icky. I don't want to stay with it. I don't want it. So I'm putting all this on you. All this anger and all this aversion and irritation and annoyance, I'm pointing fingers at you. It's your fault. What they want to do is for you to feel inadequate enough to buy into it. So you can start to talk about, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to. How can I do? What can I do? And they think, great, I don't need to feel it. Anger is not a real thing. Aversion, ill will, being unfriendly and unkind, that's an inside job. Why can't you be friendly? Why can't you be kind? Why can't you be loving and compassionate, forgiving towards everyone? Because if you are towards them, then you will miss out. What is it in you that can miss out? Something that hasn't been met. You haven't met you with the love and compassion and kindness and forgiveness. And if you are in deficit and you give out, there's nothing left for you. So it's an inside job. The more reaction, the more reflection. Reflect into that. How can you make sure that you fill yourself up with everything you need. So other people are allowed to be in the world the way that they are. They can be angry at you, they can be annoyed at you, they can be envious of you, it's fine. You know? If you have an issue with it, look into why. Stay with that contraction that you feel in your body. We're going to do a sofa sit about this. We're going to talk about it. We're going to do lots and lots of inquiries about this. And we're going to talk about the bubble of reality some more. We're going to talk about all the verbal indicators, because there's so many verbal indicators. You can hear what it's actually pointing at. But with this lesson, I really, really want you to know that the more reaction, the more reflection. The more you react to something, the more in deficit you are. The more love and compassion needs to go this way. The more you believe in other people being angry at you, and it matters that people are angry at you. They're not allowed to be angry at you. You have to set people free. If it's an issue for you, it's because internally there's a sensation and a feeling of inadequacy. How is that possible? How can you fill yourself up so you can be in the space where it's completely okay? You know they talk about them. If people, critique you in any way, see how much of it is useful. Are they pointing things out that that would be a good thing to reflect on? That doesn't matter. You can reflect on it, but rest assured that they're not talking about you. They're only talking about themselves. And that's where and you will hear me say this a lot of times. If you're this far in the curriculum, you will hear me start to talk about, I want you to guide. Because it's like being an amazing musician. There's one thing is going to music school and learn that. Another thing is to play in front of other people. It's like everything else. One thing is, being an actor and standing in front of the mirror. Another thing is standing on the stage. And it's the same with this. One thing is you knowing all these things. Another thing is you saying it to other people. And that's why I encourage you to go to every single group you can. And just sit there. Just in the beginning start to notice what happens in you. How would you guide this person? What would you have focus on? And then look at that is pointing to you. How would you look at that? How would you deal with that? What you are recommending other people to do is an advice to you. And you only experience that with guiding. So the fourth and the fifth fetter is very much about discovering that diversion that we create in I want and I don't want. The craving you have about something, or the aversion you have about something. We're straight back to the first, I am not. We're back to identification. And it's pointing to the parts of you that needs love and compassion and kindness. It's not about them, ever. It's not about them changing, ever. It's about you looking at you. What contraction is happening in you that you're trying to divert from? How can you meet that with love and compassion? How can you fill yourself up with love and compassion? Lots and lots of kindness. No matter what comes up to the surface, it's okay. It's okay. It's for you to realize that you don't need to project and divert anymore. You're here. It's fine. What you have been into every room, like we talked about in the first fetter, you are entering the house. And you are into every single room in the house. And you are allowing whatever you're finding in every single room to be there. It's part of you and it's okay. If you have the feeling, but I don't want to be so selfish and egotistical. Why? What's wrong with that? If there's no good or bad, if there's no judgment, then there's just opinions. What is the issue with you standing up for yourself? What is the issue with you saying no? The moment there's things that we don't want, it's important to look into why. And I'm not saying that you should go out and, kick a puppy. It's not what I'm talking about at all. I'm talking about that contraction you feel in you to avoid it. But because kicking a puppy is just a diversion as well. Being a twat towards other people is just a diversion. Why aren't you brave enough to stay here? If you get angry at other people and annoyed at other people, there's a lack of bravery to stay here, to be with this. Detach all the thoughts about the labels of what it is and just stay with it. Just stay with it. So I was thinking, if we look back at the emotional indicators, fear, anger, guilt, and shame, right? Because you will find that whenever you're diverting, you feel angry or annoyed or irritated, frustrated, envious, resentful, whatever. When you acknowledge that that is a diversion, it's an inside job. Okay, the more I react, the more I need to reflect. Okay, I'm reflecting now, pointing at myself, pointing at other people, 3 fingers pointing at you. So what is it right now? Where is that? Where is that? And if we talk about guilt or shame, right, then it's that underlying feeling of I'm not, I should be. I'm not okay the way that I am. I feel guilty about something in me. And if you have had the acknowledgement of there is no I, then you will project the I am not, I should be into something external. And that's usually, I don't look good enough. I'm not educated enough. So it's something pointing in that direction, of the lack of I am not, I should be. Which means that you will start to notice that people comment on how you look, or people comment on your level of education, or people comment on whatever. Whatever you hear people are saying about you, look at where that is pointing, because it's pointing straight back to that guilt and shame. You would have me and Todd saying, do they though? Do people comment on how you look? Do they comment on your level of education? Yes, they do. Are you sure about that? Are you sure about that? Or is that what you hear? Is that what is an issue in you? They don't care. They're only talking about their bubble. They don't care. So listen to where it's pointing. It's pointing to you having an issue with how you look. It's not pointing to what they think about your look. You're just hearing that. You didn't hear all the million of things that other people said that you're fine with. You heard only the thing that you have an issue with. So whatever people say is about them. They're only letting you in on their secrets. But what you hear that they say, that's relevant for you. What you hear, what you see, what you think that they are saying or doing, that's relevant for you. And that is always pointing at some of the emotional indicators in the second fetter, always pointing at something underlying that needs your love and compassion and kindness. And if you have an issue about anger, then you have that underlying belief, I'm in danger. So project that I need to secure, I need to make sure that I'm safe, right? Then you see through self, there's no separate self, there's no self. I know that now, fine, I know that. And then you're going to say things like, people are so aggressive. Todd and I are going to go, are they? Are you sure about that? Are you sure people are aggressive? Or are you hearing people being aggressive? They're only letting you in on what is going on in their lives. They're not talking about anything but what you think you hear, what you think you see. That is pointing to you. It's pointing to an underlying belief about anger. about, all the levels of anger. I can really recommend, if you have an issue here, I can really, really recommend you the exploration of anger that Toddy has on his YouTube page. There's a really, really good inquiry about anger that I can recommend you. We're going to talk more about that at some point. There are like 4 levels of anger. And 3 of them is being dissolved with that inquiry. So if you have an issue about anger, I can really recommend you to listen to that. And believing that anger is a real thing is just a diversion. You're creating a concept out of a story that's not real. And the last thing is about fear, that if you have that underlying belief of the world is an unsafe place, and then you see through self, there's no separate self, I know that now. But then you have to, I need to make, you never know what might happen. You really need to make yourself safe. Are you sure about that? Whatever you project into something is only an insight to you. Other people are not seeing that. So how is that relevant for you? So that was a little rant. There's going to be sessions where I talk about the bubble of reality, but I would like for you to really, really look into this. Really acknowledge that there is a pain tied into that diversion that you're doing. When you feel ill will, anger, aversion, annoyance, irritation, frustration, envy and resentment, when you feel that and pointing fingers at other people, it's only a diversion because there's something in you that you do not want to be with. Be brave, be brave, be curious, stay with that. Detach the label of anger and annoyance and so on. Detach that label and just stay with the feeling and see where that takes you. And that I would like for you to work with until we look at the bubble of reality and the verbal indicators. Because I don't want you to bypass in any way. I really, really want you to be in a place where you fully and completely and utterly and absolutely accept everything. Have lots of love to the situation, to yourself, to other people. No matter what other people do, you meet them with love and compassion. They do them. They act in the world in the way that works for them. And so do you. So make sure that you meet everything with love and compassion. People are allowed to be who they are. They're allowed to believe what they believe. They're allowed to do what they do. There's no right or wrong in what anybody's doing. They clearly think it's right. And they're most likely doing it out of survival. So keep pulling it back. And then I also would, still recommend you, have a notebook, write down all these things, everything you get annoyed and angry about, write it down. And start to look at where's that pointing? Where's that pointing? If you detach the label of that, what is the feeling of it? Ooh, that was the same as the other day when, Janice said that the other thing. What was that about? Keep looking back to that contraction that you're trying to avoid, that you're trying to deflect from. And know when you get angry, it is a reaction, a reflection is needed. There is identification happening. If there's no identification happening, people can do and say whatever they want. There will be no reaction. The reaction is happening because a reflection is needed. You don't react to what other people say or do when there's nothing that needs to be reflected on. When everything is fine. When everything is accepted. When everything's okay. There's nothing that needs to be any different. And people are allowed to be who they are, and you can meet them with compassion. Where they are, you can meet them with compassion. It's no longer me selfing. You make me feel like this. You can allow other people to be in the world the way they are and have compassion. Oh my goodness, do you need a hug? You can have compassion. Yeah. So lots of love to you, and lots of surplus and bravery and good wishes. Make sure you come to the Q&A every other Friday, or that you come to the inquiry every other Tuesday. I also want to say that Todd, he has one-to-ones. I'm gonna link into his calendar so you can make directly bookings with him if you want a one-to-one. Otherwise, speak to your guide from LU. Go to Vince's meeting on Sundays, and speak with friends about this. Write it down in your notebook and really, really look into it. And know there is no anger, aversion, ill will, resentment, envy, frustration, annoyance, and irritation. It doesn't exist. It's just a diversion. Thank you.